The question is, do my scraps make me cry? Honestly, they make me want to cry. Do yours? You see, my current situation is I color code these containers and then I just shove everything that is a little less than a fat quarter by color into these bins. As you can see, everything just kind of gets shoved down in the bottom or off to the side and gets really wrinkled, and it's just crazy in these bins. I do not like it. Friends, it gets even worse. In the closet, I keep a couple of these bins with these bags in them. And as I'm working on projects, I get little scraps or big scraps, and I just toss them in these bags. There's a bag right there that's never even been gone through. Hi friends, Tracy here from the Sewing Channel. Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. The fact of the matter is, when you have more stuff, then you have to manage more stuff. The less stuff you have, the less you have to manage. And if you're like me and you have tons of scraps all over the place, crazily, because you're so excited to do projects that you just kind of don't worry about the scraps, then stick around because I'm going to share with you just how I am trying to manage my scraps so that they no longer make me cry. They make me happy. Wouldn't it be nice to go into your scrap bin and pull out pre-cuts? Interesting, right? How about going into your stash and you need to make a little girl's quilt? So you pull out your 5.5-inch squared pieces of pink fabric. They're already starched, they're already pre-cut perfectly and ready to go. That sounds like a perfect world, friend. Enough talking already. This is totally doable, so let's get to it. First, establish rules for your scraps. Here's what I mean by that. Your rules could be different than my rules too. Keep that in mind. You need to think about what size pre-cut you will actually utilize in your quilts. What do you use the most of? For my pre-cut rule, I used 5.5-inch squares, 10-inch squares, 2.5-inch wide strips at any length, and pre-cut strings that are under 2.5 inches wide at any length. And you can see here in the garbage that I only had a little bit of carnage left over from all that pink. So here are the rulers that I'm utilizing to get my scraps under management. I kind of wish I had a 10-inch square, but I don't. And since I don't, I'm using my 12.5-inch squared ruler, my 5.5-inch squared ruler, and then my long 2.5 by 18 inches long ruler. This right here is one of the best starches I've ever used. It's a heavy spray starch that doesn't leave any flakes behind, and it's generic from the Dollar General. And get this, it's $1.25 each. Oh yeah, I grabbed like 6 of them. So the first thing I did was spray starch on that first piece of larger fabric, the blue fabric there. Iron the starch on there. Then I spray a layer on the next piece of fabric, lay that over that blue fabric and press that out. And then I yet lay another piece on there and do the same thing. I ultimately ended up with 4 layers to cut through on this fabric. The way I had them laying on my pressing station was the same exact way that I just picked up the stack and just laid it right onto the cutting mat. So that way everything was together from the get-go. And the corner that had the most fabric on it is where I started to make that 10-inch cut. I only went 4 layers, but if you feel comfortable going more than that, go for it. Now I was left with an odd piece of fabric, so what I did was separate right down the center, making 2 big chunks of fabric. After cutting, I checked to make sure if I can get a 5.5-inch square out of this fabric, and if I took the top layer off, then I could get 2 5.5-inch squares from the bottom pieces, and that's what I did. After all of the big pre-cuts are cut out, then I go to the 2.5-inch wide strips and then the anything under 2.5-inch wide strings. I wanted to be sure and tell you too that as I'm cutting out these strips and strings, I'm making sure that the ends are perfectly square right now while I'm in the middle of doing all this cutting, so that way when I pull them out, I know they're perfect and they need nothing done to them. If I even just took an hour out of each day, each sewing day, and cut my scraps up in this manner, I do believe that my stress about my scraps would diminish significantly. So let me show you how I think I'm going to store all of these pre-cut scraps. Joann Fabrics is having a sale right now on these carts right here, these little rolly carts. Regular $60, on sale for $29. And then if you have a coupon or the 25% off total purchase coupon, you can get it for even lower than that, making this a huge bargain. Here are all of the 10-inch squares in all of the pink colors. I'm going to take a regular Ziploc bag. I mean, just a regular old Ziploc bag. And if these are pretty even on here, this will slide in really nice, and it will also lay nice and flat. Depending, of course, on how many you do have in there. I mean, if you have double this amount, it's not going to do that, of course. But if you have that many scraps, then you better get busy. Fit in this Ziploc bag just absolutely perfectly. And you can close them if you'd like. I mainly put them in here because of the dust and such. I've seen fabric that has dust on it, and I don't prefer to use it like that. So that's why I'm going to keep mine covered. I'm going to get yet another Ziploc bag to put all of my 5.5-inch squared pieces of fabric. Now, mind you, a charm square is usually 5 inches, but I cut mine 5.5 inches because that's the way I wanted them. So you may prefer yours at 5.5 or 5, it doesn't matter. But that's why I said make it your rule. You will only use your pre-cut scrap fabric if they're the cut that you like and that you like to use. I want to mention on these ones in particular, because some have a longer length on them, since we pre-starch these, you don't want to fold them in half and actually make a crease, because that might stay in there. So what I do is I added all of the longer ones at the back and then piled on consecutively, you know, up to the smallest piece, I guess you could say. And then I lifted this up like this and kind of left it rolled right there. I didn't put a crease, it's just kind of hanging out there. And then I'm going to lay it right in here. And this is all of my 2.5-inch wide pieces of fabric. I'm gonna actually leave that hanging out, I think, just like that. Then I'm going to take my under 2.5-inch wide strings. What are strings, you're probably asking yourself? Maybe, I don't know if you don't know what those are anyways. I will tell you. I don't happen to have a string quilt to show you. All a string quilt is taking these different size in width strings. They call them strings, anything that's sort of rectangular and long. Let's pretend that I sewed all of these together like so, and then I trimmed them. And then you might add this way in different varying widths. Once you get those all together, then you'd sew it to those. You can make any pattern you want with strings. It doesn't matter. You could just have whatever width. I have a feeling that we're going to be making some really awesome string quilts here coming up this summer. So keep your eye out for those. Because I have all these strings now, you know I'm going to be using them. Hey, if my stuff is ready to go, you better believe I'm going to be pulling these out of my stash and using them. I mean, they're all starched and ready. You can't get any better than that. So in this bag, I put the 2.5-inch wide strips, and then I'm also going to put my strings in here in the pink. So here were all my pre-cut rolls, and now I'm going to put them in the cart. So I think what I'm going to do is put all of my 10-inch squares down here. Now I have the aqua and I have the green done. I have my pink right here that's done. So I'll lay all those down in the bottom. And here I have my aqua, my green, and my pink all in my 5.5, ready to go. For my 2.5-inch wide strips and my under 2.5-inch wide strings, I think I'm going to put those in the top. So eventually when I get all of my fabric done, maybe I'll need to use one of those other carts that I bought. I don't know. What is your scrap situation in your sewing space? Will this pre-cut scrap method even work? I don't know, but it sure did feel good to get all of those scraps out of those bins. It was really satisfying to starch all this fabric scrap and cut them into pre-cuts that I can use. I'll be working on my scrap situation all weekend long and probably into next week. I'm encouraging you, if you're in that situation too with your scraps, that you give it a try too. Until next time on the Sewing Channel, take care.